friends. We're back with your favorite podcast show of the week. It's Location Weekly. It's episode number 566, and we're recording on April the 26th. Brianna, how's it going?
It's going another day in paradise, you know? How's it going for you?
Yeah, it's okay. It's been a bit of a long, rough, week, but we're here. It's spring. I was at the Jays game last night. They played the Boston Red Sox with my daughter, and it was one of those games where it was like a pitcher's duel, and then it went into the eighth inning, tied at two, and then we're the home team. We managed to hit a grand slam to win it, so that's fun.
That is fun. It's an exciting way to wrap it up, and you're glad you stay, right?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So, and the Raptors managed to stave off elimination again. So last night. So things are okay.
In the sports world, life is good for you.
Yeah, in sports world.
Yeah.
Anyhow, we've got a good show, four stories per usual, a range of things today, but I'll let Brianna kick us off.
All right. So Incognia, we've known about this company for a while, and they have introduced a new solution. It is like location-based device authorization. So this is just mobile authentication that's really allowing you to support those mobile apps that you have and making sure that whenever you are launching a new session, in essence, that it's, preventing that fraud. And I think this is like happening more and more. Obviously, we're seeing much more transactions that we're doing with our mobile devices these days. We're storing our, information on the phone. And so I think there's been a huge increase in fraud that's been happening. So typically, device fingerprinting solutions are not very useful on mobile devices in general. And, establishing that typically requires some type of multi-factor authentication that's happening. And so, Incognia is citing this as a solution to that user friction and like kind of the pain point of having to log in again or using MFA. And so really they're just helping to decrease that risk. So they're using the device's location, and then they have a bunch of different other assessments that they have. And they can look at the historical behavior, and they cited that nearly 89% of the time, the legitimate device authorizations are occurring in similar places. You think your home, your office, like the general places that you spend time at. So really, they're just trying to, I would say, their three kind of value propositions are reducing that friction with legitimate traffic and legitimate logins. And then reducing any account takeovers that are happening, and then the real-time validation of those trusted devices, across the world and different geographic regions. I was thinking this is very timely. Like I have a couple of my teenage nieces who have been hacked on Instagram lately. And so they're always sending me those messages like, I need your help, or can you vote for me, or something like that, which is really interesting. And apparently they can't get their accounts back because by the time they go in and log in the next day, they've already changed their password, the email to verify it, all of those things, which is very interesting that it's so simple to hack an Instagram account. You would think that one of those very large companies would have a little bit more security. So obviously this is still a challenge. And it also brought me back to my days at Digital Envoy, Digital Element. Many years ago, they launched a fraud prevention solution. And this is just, in essence, a take on that. It's not necessarily new, probably just packaged in an SDK mobile version versus maybe something that was built for online authentication many years ago. But it's still necessary, right? Obviously, this isn't being employed or adopted as much as it should, but there needs to be some level of authentication. And I think that understanding your user behavior, where you typically are, and then, maybe requiring that authentication only when those risk factors are flagged, right? It makes for a much better user experience. So, I think this is good for Incognia. Obviously, there's still a need in the market. It's a growing problem every day. They're looking to really aim at FinServe with crypto growing. social networks, online gaming, and some other use cases that they cited. But those are some of the main ones. But yeah, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's absolutely necessary in today's age. I mean, I can speak directly, on this. I've been personally, subject of target for fraud in the last number of months. The LBMA's Instagram account was also hacked at one point earlier in like January, I think it was. We managed to get it back, but yeah, I think everywhere you go now, you've got multi-factor authentication happening. To try and tighten things up, and sending, a message to your phone on text to get a code and like plug that in. I personally, I think it's good. I think it's important that we have these layers that are there. The other thing that goes through my mind when I hear about technology like this or stories like this is, back in the early days of the LBMA, we were doing a lot of stories at that time about, sort of just more traditional, employer employee device tracking. So like, you would, let's say somebody works at the FBI or some place, military or whatever, that has sensitive information that they're working with while in the office. You don't want that information leaving the office, and so having the ability to track the device itself and where it goes, from a geofencing and as it leaves the building, and then when it logs on somewhere or things like that, I think become really important. So I think employers are also cognizant of this type of solution. So I think, yeah, absolutely, in the world of social networks and online, accounts and things like that, it's an absolute necessity. But I think there's also an application for this type of stuff in, employee settings, around device management, as well as, obviously we've talked a lot about these types of anti-fraud solutions when it comes to payments. And the banks and credit card companies, all sort of, now use location, data in real time to understand, is that person actually, in New York, or not, and is that a real transaction that's happening or not? So, things like that become, quite vital in it. So yeah, I'm as you say, it's probably not like, earth shattering in terms of technology, but I think the application side of it is huge in terms of what they're doing. So yeah, interesting stuff.
I just like to respond back, hey, just send me your bank account number and I'll send the money right away to when I get those special messages from they're like,
Yeah,
what?
exactly. So, all right, on to our second story. So, longtime big player in the world of location data is ESRI, and they've launched a new product called StoryMaps, and it's about enabling content creators to unify their digital experiences all in one place, with geographic data sort of tied into it. And the example that they speak to, or I guess the major client case study that they talk about, is National Geographic. And Jack Dangermond, who's the founder of ESRI, says every moment and memory we treasure is connected to a specific location, which is why we're making it easier to transport people anywhere in the world through richer storytelling. So obviously, content creation, and these experiences, and you think about National Geographic, it is about telling stories, and those stories are all about being connected to a place. So essentially, what StoryMaps does is it gives you a way to connect text and multimedia images and videos, audio links, and tie those all back to a map, and place data in terms of what it's all linked to and what's happening around it. So I think it's really interesting. So you can build the stories with the assets inside of the StoryMaps piece. You can publish it to audiences from there. You can create interactive maps, to help people follow you along on your journey, and things like that. So I think it's an interesting application for geo and location data. To kind of focus on content creation and helping people tell stories based on that. And I think even in a corporate setting like we're in, trying to put together infographics or trying to put together marketing pieces, having access to tools where you can kind of tell that story visually, with with mapping data underneath it, I think is quite interesting. So I like this. I think it's interesting to see this coming from a company like ESRI. There's a free basic plan with sort of a core set of features, and then there's premium features that you can subscribe to that range from $10 a month up to $100 a month, depending on kind of what feature set you want. So, yeah, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, we've seen a lot of this content tied to location features being enabled across social quite often. So I think that this is kind of a natural progression of that, but through more of a content producer, like at mass scale. I think Discovery hits is like the perfect application of this. I think my question here is like for consumption, what is the adoption method? And so that's my concern, is that if it's reliant on, specific ways of consumers consuming the content that is created across those interactive maps, I think that presents a challenge a little bit, and there's a little bit of a friction point. So that's my one concern with this. But I think that it's great that Esri is kind of going to more of this like marketing, like media consumption type of a play, which we haven't seen a lot from them in the past in that area. So that's what I do like about this story, actually.
Yeah, and they've even got like on the asset side of things, like for images and stuff, they've got a partnership built in with Unsplash,
Very
which
cool.
is one of those growing platforms like Canva and all that out there.
Yeah,
Kind of cool.
for
Yeah.
sure.
All right.
All right, well, let's talk about autonomous shopping for a second here. American Airlines Center, where, if you're not familiar, Dallas Mavericks, Dallas Stars, that's where they play. And that arena has opened two, what they're calling frictionless food and beverage experiences. This is in partnership with the hospitality company Levy. And then they have an innovation studio, DBK Studio. So they have these like market to go shops at the terrace level, which is like, one of the main concourses there that's on the arena. And they're slated to open up later this month. And they're powered by these autonomous retail technology. So they're launching this from standard AI and then a mobile payment technology from Spot On. And really, they're just allowing the autonomous experience, right? So the market to go locations, they have the freshly prepared packaged snacks, refreshments, beer, wine, soft drinks, all of those things. And then a consumer can go and they have to download a specific mobile app, and they can do the checkout. They just tap like the checkout via app, and they don't have to go wait in line. And it really is supposed to be powered with the cameras, the AI powered cameras that are there, mobile payment technology to have that like checkout free system registers. And they're saying like touting the features of no waiting and scanning. So I think this is cool. I do feel like when you're at a sporting event, the last thing you want to do, like you want to go get a beer really quick or something, but you want to get back, especially when you think about hockey or basketball. It's not like baseball where you have that kind of time, a few minutes in between innings where you have that little bit of a break. And so you don't really want to miss like a lot of what's happening, and those long lines can be really painful. So I like this from an aspect that there is a pain point. Nobody wants to wait, even in a concert, right? Type of a thing. You want to get your drink and get back to your seat. So I think that's interesting. What I would love for them to have done is maybe incorporated this to an existing wallet, existing checkout. I think having to download an app actually creates more friction, and it's just kind of painful. So there has to be sort of like a happy medium, I think. And I'm not sure that obviously they're only opening two of these, so they have their standard concessions that you can pay cash and do all of those things with that continue. But I think that this is cool. I like that they're testing it in the sports arena. And I think that people will start to use it, especially those season ticket holders, maybe who have seats close to where those markets are and things of that nature. But what do you think?
Yeah, I think that we're seeing a growing sort of adoption of this type of technology in sports stadiums and arenas and ballparks and so on. And I was also at the Blue Jays home opener, which was, the Jays, because of the pandemic, they last year they weren't even allowed to play at home because of the border, travel restrictions and whatever and whatever. And so it's kind of like the first home opener. But I have to say, like, from a fan experience, the game itself and all that was going on the field was amazing, but the concessions experience was a disaster. It was, I got up at one point to go grab a hot dog, and it was like 40 minutes before I was back at my seat, right? And it was just crazy. Like, so I think that especially environments like this where you have, and it was sold out, like 52,000 people in the stadium, whatever, but still, like, it's packed, right? And you need to create efficiencies, to get people moving through, much faster. And I think these are the kinds of technologies that make sense for that. Sidebar story or related to this though is the Astros in Houston have teamed up with Amazon, and they've got two food and beverage stores now at Minute Maid Park with the Amazon Just Walk Out technology as well. And so again, like, this is happening now across different sports and different types of stadiums and venues. Theirs is a little bit different because whereas here you've got the mobile app piece that you were just talking about, whereas at Minute Maid Park, it's the way it works is you kind of come up to the store, and they have this thing where you insert your credit card um, in there, and then you go in and you pick up the stuff, and it can detect what you've taken off the shelf or put back on the shelf. And then when you're done, whatever you've got, it basically charges your credit card directly. So that's kind of interesting, and how they've tied that together. It's not a mobile payment piece. Might be easier for sort of the mass adoption that you want in that type of environment. So, but overall, we're seeing more and more of this, and yeah, even the next story I'll talk about in a second kind of relates too. So.
Yeah, I mean, what we're seeing, I think, is a lot of testing, right? Figuring out what will consumers adopt, how will they use it, what are the friction points, just trying to feel all of that out. It almost makes me think about, Disney and like the fast pass and the bracelet that you can pay with and everything that's kind of just like wrapped in there. But I could see a case where, for example, somebody comes in and they're just like, hey, whatever, I want to do the all you can eat and drink package here at the stadium while I'm here. And I just can go up and grab what I want when I want it. And I have like some type of a fast pass type of a deal. Because like you spend a lot of money on that food, but you think, hey, maybe for 30-40 bucks a person, and you get up to however many trips to the concession stand for your drinks and snacks, that's a pretty good deal, and not having to wait in line. Just kind of that grab and go mentality. So we'll see. I mean, we're going to see like what consumers will adopt, how will they behave, and then that's going to change again, because that's what happens in this industry and keeps us talking about
Yeah,
it.
absolutely. So moving on to our final story now, which is directly related to this as well, is Instacart. You might remember last year acquired a company called Caper, and so now that they've kind of integrated that into what they do at Instacart, they've launched two new AI powered payment platforms. One called the Caper Cart, and the other called the Caper Counter. The Caper Cart basically auto detects items in your shopping cart, scans the items directly, and then completes a checkout experience for you. So they're piloting this right now at a bunch of retailers across the U.S. Plan to expand and roll this out. So it's a sort of automated detect what's inside your shopping cart, and then basically just you automatically pay and transact and walk out, and so on. The Caper counter though is really interesting. So this is a kind of big box device, kind of hollowed out with a scale kind of thing built into it on the bottom, and you place your items on this, and then basically it kind of calculates what's there, and then charges you accordingly. And they're testing this right now. Going back to our previous stories, they've got this in pilot right now at Boston's Fenway Stadium and Pittsburgh's Heinz Field. And they're doing this in partnership with Aramark Sports and Entertainment. So one of the things that's interesting for me, besides the piloting that's going on in sports that we've been talking about, is the first story that you mentioned. They had partnered with Levy, and that was with Standard AI technology. Then I mentioned about Houston and Minute Maid Park, working with Amazon's technology, and now you have here Instacart and Capers technology going into Fenway and Pittsburgh. But the other part of this is the first story. They had partnered with Levy, and Levy's like a food, restaurant distribution type of service that runs concessions and things like this, or cafeterias and so on. And as is Aramark, who's the partner here in this particular case. And so it's interesting to see that those types of companies that are in the business of cafeteria operations or, concession operations or things like that, are the ones that are sort of, leading the charge to bring this technology into their client environments. And kind of moving forward on that. So I think that's really interesting. So basically the counter technology here that's in these two stadiums, visually identifies the items by shape, color, key features, and sizes, and then basically it's all contact free and much faster to check out, right? Which is what we've been talking about that speed of moving people through. And what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I was reading that they said it was like 65% faster than traditional, methods.
Yeah.
So I think that that's like a huge win. And what I also feel like has been happening in the background is that we took so much time away from having these experiences and being in these crowds that there was a little bit of a buffer there for people to start thinking about, how do we make this experience better? How do we make it more enjoyable for people to come out? How do we make people feel safer? How do we let them watch the game more? So there's like more investment that's going into that experience. And I think it's really very cool to see this happening again in the sports stadiums, but also just in general, right? Checking out and, saving time there. It also makes you think about whose job are they taking? But
for sure,
it's a need for sure.
absolutely. Yeah, I could see like this kind of thing. Every year here for like 100 years, there's been this like huge like fair with like carnival games and rides and all of that. Like it's a massive thing called the Canadian National Exhibition. It's been going on for a century plus, and it's a massive thing. It runs for 2 weeks long. I've been to it like 1,000 times, and it's there's so many like situations where there's huge long lines, for food, for rides, for whatever. And I just, the more I think about it, like I wonder if there's ways to apply this kind of technology even in events that or situations like that where it's just on for a week or two. Might be cost prohibitive at this point, but hopefully in time those costs come down and it becomes something that can actually be deployed in a mobile temporal kind of setting like that.
Yeah, for sure.
Anyways, so that's our show for this week. You've been listening and watching episode number 566 of Location Weekly. We thank you for your time. If you have story ideas, please reach out to us. We're always up for interesting news that is happening around the world of location. Please give us some feedback, some likes, some love, some criticism, whatever you got. We want it. And we'll see you next week for another show. Have a great week, everybody. Bye.
Bye.